long before protein powder existed, and long before a gym stood on every corner, there was a grain. Ancient, golden, and ground on stone in a kitchen that smelled like fire and earth. It fed civilizations for 10,000 years because it holds nearly 4 times more protein than beef. Yet almost no one alive today knows its name or where God placed it in Scripture. But I am not going to tell you what it is just yet, because first you need to see where it came from. You need to understand what bread meant before it became a product wrapped in plastic on a shelf. Walk with me for a moment. Picture the Karacadag Mountains of southeastern Turkey just before dawn. The air is cool and thin and smells like wet stone. Wild grass covers the slopes in every direction. A woman kneels in a field of golden stalks that reach her waist. She pulls the seed heads off a grass she has been tending for 3 seasons. The kernels are small and hard and wrapped in a tough husk. She does not know she is holding the first domesticated grain in human history. She just knows it keeps her children alive. This was not a garden planted for pleasure. This was survival. Every seed she saved and every row she sowed was the difference between eating and starving. In this part of the world 10,000 years ago, grain was not a side dish. It was the meal. It was ground between 2 flat stones and mixed with water and baked on clay over open coals. It was the center of every table and every prayer. In 1997, a team of geneticists published a study in the journal Science. They analyzed the DNA of wild grain populations still growing on these same mountain slopes. What they found confirmed what archaeologists had suspected for decades. This single range of mountains in southeastern Turkey was the birthplace of wheat. Not the wheat you buy today, the original wheat, the first one. Archaeologists have found seeds of this grain sealed inside clay jars at Jericho. They found them at Jarmo in northern Iraq. They found them at Catalhoyuk in central Turkey. Some of those jars were sealed 9,000 years ago, and the kernels inside were still intact. Now, your grandmother may not have lived in the mountains of Turkey, but if she grew up in rural Italy or in the hills of southern Germany or in the highlands of Ethiopia, she knew this grain. She baked bread with it. She called it by a local name. She never questioned it because it was simply what bread had always been made from. She did not need a label to tell her it was good. She could see it in the color of the flour. Golden, not white. But this grain was not just any wheat. There were many grasses on those ancient slopes, many seeds, many experiments over thousands of years. And out of all of them, one species stood apart. One grain that came first, one line of seeds that has never been crossed with another plant. The kernels were smaller than what you see today. The husks were tougher. The flour was dense and rich and the color of late afternoon sunlight. And the bread it made carried something inside it that modern wheat lost a very long time ago. So what is this grain, and what exactly did modern wheat lose? The grain is Einkorn, Triticum monococcum. In German, the name means one grain, because each spikelet on the stalk produces just a single kernel. It is the oldest domesticated wheat on Earth, and it is the only wheat that has never been hybridized. Now here is where it gets interesting. When most people hear the word wheat, they think of the thing their doctor told them to avoid. Gluten, inflammation, blood sugar spikes. And if you are talking about modern wheat, they are right. But Einkorn is not modern wheat. It has a completely different genetic structure. Modern bread wheat has 42 chromosomes. Einkorn has 14. That is not a small difference. That is a different plant entirely. A study published in Molecular Nutrition and Food Research in 2006 found that einkorn gluten triggered significantly less immune response in laboratory tests than modern wheat gluten. Researchers noted that einkorn's gliadin proteins have a different amino acid sequence, one that is far less likely to trigger the inflammatory cascade. Now, this does not make einkorn safe for someone diagnosed with celiac disease, but for the millions of people who feel terrible after eating bread and have been told to just stop eating wheat altogether, einkorn may be a completely different story. The prophet Ezekiel was given a direct command from God. In Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 9, the Lord said, "Take wheat and barley, beans and lentils, millet and spelt, and put them in a single vessel and make bread of them." Scholars at the Associates for Biblical Research confirm that the wheat available in the ancient Near East during Ezekiel's time was not the modern triticum estivum that fills grocery shelves today. It was einkorn, or its close descendant, emmer. The bread God commanded Ezekiel to bake was made from a grain that no longer exists in most kitchens. And in Genesis chapter 3, verse 19, God told Adam, "By the sweat of your brow, you will eat bread." Bread is the first food God names after Eden, and the first bread was made from the first wheat. So, if this grain fed the ancient world for 10,000 years, if it was in the bread of Ezekiel, if it was ground into flour in every kitchen from Jericho to Jerusalem, why has nobody heard of it? And what is hiding inside it that the modern food system quietly left behind? Let me show you the numbers. Einkorn contains roughly 18 to 21 grams of protein per 100 grams of dry grain. Some heritage cultivars tested by the University of Hohenheim in Germany measured as high as 23% protein content. Modern bread wheat averages 8 to 14 grams. That alone is a difference most people never hear about. But here is the number the title promised you. 1 acre of einkorn produces approximately 160 to 200 pounds of harvestable protein. 1 acre of cattle grazing land produces approximately 40 to 50 pounds of usable protein per year. That is nearly 4 times more protein from the grain, for a fraction of the water, a fraction of the land, and none of the slaughter. You read the title and thought I was going to compare a bowl of grain to a steak. The real comparison is bigger than that. It is about what feeds a family, what feeds a village, what feeds a civilization. And for 10,000 years, the answer was this grain. Remember what I told you at the beginning. Nearly 4 times more usable protein per acre than beef. Now you understand why. This is not a diet trend. This is how the ancient world actually survived. But protein is only the beginning. Einkorn contains between 3 and 8 times more lutein than modern wheat. A study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry in 2006 measured einkorn lutein content at up to 7.4 micrograms per gram. Modern wheat averaged 0.5 to 1.3. Lutein is the pigment that protects your eyes from blue light damage and age-related degeneration. It is what gives einkorn flour its golden color. Modern wheat flour is white because the lutein was bred out of it. Every time you look at a bag of white flour, you are looking at what was removed. Now picture your kitchen counter. On one side, a bag of modern all-purpose flour. White, stripped, bleached. On the other side, a bag of einkorn flour. Golden, almost the color of honey. The difference is not cosmetic. It is nutritional. One has lutein, one does not. A study from the University of Bologna, published in 2020, found that einkorn had significantly higher zinc and iron bioavailability than modern wheat varieties. The researchers attributed this to lower phytic acid content. Phytic acid is the compound in grains that binds to minerals and prevents your body from absorbing them. Einkorn has less of it, which means the iron and zinc in einkorn do not just sit there. They actually get into your blood. Now think about what you are spending. A 1-pound bag of organic einkorn flour costs about $6. A 30-day supply of whey protein isolate costs $40 to $60. A month of lutein supplements costs another $15 to $20. While modern supplements isolate these nutrients, ancient grains naturally provided a complex package of protein, vitamins, and minerals as a daily staple. Walk into any pharmacy in America and look at the supplement aisle. Rows and rows of bottles promising you protein, eye health, mineral support, gut repair. Now walk into a field in southern Turkey and look at one stalk of einkorn. It is doing all of that, and it has been doing it for 10,000 years. Your great-grandmother did not need a supplement aisle. She needed a millstone. For 10,000 years, einkorn was bred. It was not a health food. It was not a specialty item. It was simply what you grew and ground and baked. Nobody called it ancient. Nobody called it alternative. It was just wheat. Then around 4,000 years ago, farmers began crossing einkorn with wild goat grasses. The result was emmer, then spelt, then eventually the modern bread wheat that fills every shelf today. Each cross added chromosomes. Each cross made the plant taller and the kernels plumper and the yields higher, and each cross stripped something away. The golden color faded to white. The protein density dropped. The lutein disappeared. The gluten structure became more aggressive. The grain became easier to process and easier to sell and harder for your body to actually use. It was not a conspiracy. It was efficiency. Modern wheat produces more bushels per acre. It threshes more easily. It stores longer. It makes fluffier bread that rises higher and sits on a shelf for weeks without going stale. Every choice the food industry made was rational, and every choice moved further from what the original grain was designed to do. The green revolution of the 1950s and 60s accelerated this. Norman Borlaug developed dwarf wheat varieties that dramatically increased yields. Those varieties saved millions of people from famine across Asia and Latin America. That is true, and that matters. But the wheat that emerged was optimized for production, not nutrition. The ancient grain was quietly set aside. Einkorn did not go extinct. It just became invisible. Small farmers in the mountains of Provence kept growing it. Families in Tuscany kept milling it by hand. Villages in southern Turkey kept baking with it the way their grandmothers had. Not because they knew the science, because no one told them to stop. The knowledge was never lost. It was just no longer profitable. And in the modern world, that is the same thing as being forgotten. But here is the thing. It was never gone. It is still growing on those same mountain slopes. The seeds are still golden. The flour still smells like warm earth. And today, you are going to bring it back. But before I show you how, I want you to see something. It is before dawn in Nazareth. The room is small and dark. The only light comes from a clay oil lamp on a stone ledge. A woman kneels beside a hand mill. Two flat stones stacked one on top of the other. A wooden handle worn smooth from years of turning. She pours a handful of small golden kernels into the center hole of the top stone. They are einkorn, the only wheat her family has ever known. They came from a neighbor's field up the hill. She traded a jar of olive oil for a sack of them last autumn. She turns the handle slowly. The stones grind against each other, and the room fills with a warm, nutty smell. The flour that falls into the clay bowl beneath is not white. It is golden, almost the color of late honey in winter light. She mixes the flour with water and a pinch of salt. She kneads it with her palms on a flat stone, worn smooth from 1,000 mornings, just like this one. The dough is dense and firm. Nothing like the soft, elastic dough modern bakers expect. She presses it flat, about 1/2 inch thick, and lays it on a clay surface set over hot coals. The bread bakes in minutes. It puffs slightly. The edges darken. She pulls it off the heat and tears it in half. Steam rises from the center. She sets one piece aside for a boy still sleeping in the next room. He is young. He works with his hands. He will need the protein, the iron, the slow-burning energy this bread provides. She does not know the word lutein. She does not know the chromosome count of her flour. She just knows this bread keeps her family standing. And when that boy grew up and sat at a table with 12 men and took bread and broke it and said, "This is my body," that is what was in front of him. Not because it was rare, not because it was exotic, because that is just what bread was. Matthew chapter 26, verse 26. The bread broken at that table was made from ancient grains deeply rooted in the land's history. Golden and dense, ground on stone the same way it had been ground for 100 generations. Do not skip this part. This is the reason you watched. Now I want to give you something. Everything I just told you means nothing if you cannot do it yourself. So here is how you bring this grain home. Start with einkorn berries, Triticum monococcum. You can find them from heritage seed suppliers and small grain farms across the United States and Europe. Einkorn is sold 2 ways: dehulled berries for eating and milling, unhulled seed for planting. For growing, you want the unhulled seed with the husk still intact. You do not need a farm. You need a 5-gallon bucket, or a 12-inch pot, or a raised bed at least 6 inches deep. Einkorn does not need much room to get started. It evolved on rocky mountain slopes where the soil was thin and the rain was scarce. Fill your container with well-drained potting mix and add a handful of compost. Nothing fancy. Einkorn is not a delicate greenhouse plant. It survived 10,000 years without soil amendments. Plant the seeds 1 inch deep. Space them 2 to 3 inches apart. Water every 2 to 3 days. Keep the soil moist, but never waterlogged. Einkorn is drought tolerant once established. Give it 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight. You will see sprouts in 7 to 14 days. The same green shoots that pushed through the soil on those Turkish mountainsides 10,000 years ago will push through the soil in your container on your porch. That is the same grain. Unchanged, einkorn is a cool season crop. If you live in a region with mild winters, plant it in the fall. It can handle warmth, but it thrives in cool weather. Think of it as a winter garden crop. If you are in zones 4 through 7, plant it in the fall. September through October. Let it overwinter the way winter wheat does. You will harvest in June or July. The grain matures in roughly 120 to 150 days. The stalks will turn golden. The seed heads will droop under their own weight. Cut the stalks. Bundle them. Let them dry for 1 to 2 weeks in a sheltered spot. Here is the part that connects you to every woman who ever ground this grain. Einkorn holds its husk tightly. You cannot just shake the kernels free. You thresh it by rubbing the heads between your palms, or by pressing them gently with a rolling pin on a flat surface. Then, winnow outdoors. Pour the grain slowly from one bowl to another and let the breeze carry the chaff away. This is exactly how it was done in Nazareth. This is exactly how it was done in Jericho. Nothing has changed. A hand grain mill will grind the berries into golden flour. You can find a good one for $30 to $60. Store the whole berries in an airtight jar in a cool, dark place. They will keep for years. Once milled, use the flour within a few weeks or freeze it. Now, here is the simplest thing you can make. Take 1 cup of einkorn flour. Add half a teaspoon of salt. Add about 1/3 of a cup of water. Knead it for 2 minutes until it forms a firm dough. Press it flat to about 1/2 inch thick. Cook it in a dry cast iron skillet over medium heat. 3 minutes per side. You just made the same flatbread that fed Nazareth, the same bread that woman baked before dawn for a boy who would change the world. Golden, dense, warm. 1 handful of einkorn seed becomes a harvest. 1 harvest gives you enough seed to plant 10 times more the following season. You buy it once. After that, the grain provides for itself. Do not overthink this. It does not need to be perfect. People have been growing einkorn for 10,000 years without a pH meter or a grow light or a YouTube tutorial. If a Neolithic farmer on a rocky hillside in Turkey could do it with a stick and a prayer, you can do it on your porch. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. Growing this grain is not a hobby. It is not a trend. It is a return to the original assignment. God gave you seeds and soil and hands. That is all you have ever needed. The same grain a mother ground before dawn in Nazareth. The same bread a carpenter's son broke at a table and called his body. The same flour that turns golden when you mill it, because the goodness is still inside. 14 chromosomes, unchanged in 10,000 years, still golden, still waiting. Go plant something.